Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening today. I'm super excited to have Meherwan Irani on the phone. Meherwan he's in Asheville, North Carolina. He and his wife Molly, in several restaurants in both Asheville and also the Atlanta, Georgia area. And, they are just crushing it, frankly, folks. Their places are very popular, very well loved, well ranked by anybody from, the Yelp folks give them great rankings, and then they get national press from New York Times and Huffington Post. So an amazing story, and Meherwan, I just really thank you very much for taking the time to do this today.
Not at all, Will. It's just a pleasure to be here.
So you're so kind of dialing back to your beginnings in the business. Now, help me out here. I just I did my research. I wanted to make sure I knew what was going on, and it looks like that you were you grew up in India, and you came to the U.S. You got your MBA, and you're out there in San Francisco, and you're doing sales and marketing, and
right.
for a while, and then you know obviously there's a great amazing culinary scene out in San Francisco. Sure, everybody knows that, but then what happened? Like, how did you go from an MBA in sales and marketing, probably in corporate America, I assume, to opening restaurants, and then in 2014 you were nominated for Best Chef in the Southeast, and you're self-taught. So tell me the backstory, man. I'm fascinated.
Sure. Well, it's you got the first part down, and so there I'm in San Francisco. I'm actually in the auto industry. It was funny. I came out of grad school and moved to San Francisco to be with Molly, who I'd met while working at a restaurant, my first job in America. And she was going to Sonoma State, so I followed her out there and fell in love and stayed. So I completely accidentally ended up in the auto industry working for Lexus. And I thought it would be like a part-time gig that I'd do for about 6 months because I wanted to go back to college and get a different degree. So what happened instead was I stayed with Lexus for 5 years and then with Mercedes-Benz for 3 years and started off in sales, literally selling automobiles, and then worked my way up in a management and an upper management and finally at a corporate level. So, but in 2005, Molly and we had our little girl, and I was managing a fairly large division, and she was working full time because we're in San Francisco, so unless you made millions of dollars, you were just getting by. And we're just sort of wanting to get out of the rat race because I was leaving for work at 6 in the morning to beat traffic, and my daughter was sleeping, and I was coming home at 10, 11 at night. My daughter was sleeping, and Molly looked at me and said, "We can't do this anymore. We're missing our kid's childhood. She's being raised by babysitters." And we did that cliche thing where we sort of looked at each other and said, well, what if there's a small town somewhere that's still cool and hip and progressive and reminds us a little of San Francisco, but it would be affordable, and Molly could quit her job and I'd find something to do, and we could raise our family there. So literally we Googled small, cool towns in America that are progressive where I could find a job. And along with a few of the usual suspects like Austin, Texas back then, and a couple places, Asheville, North Carolina popped up really high on the list, and it was sort of serendipity. And literally a day later, I was talking to an old-time friend who was in the real estate industry, and I just sort of, he was saying, "How you doing?" I was telling him about my blah, 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 and I just mentioned casually, I just checked out this town called Asheville, North Carolina. He's like, "That's so funny. I was just talking to a real estate developer was looking for a good guy to be in sales and marketing, and hey, if you're thinking of Asheville, I can connect the two of you together." Well, 5 days later, we moved lock, stock, and barrel, packed up everything. I drove the dogs across country, and Molly and Aria flew, and we had a moving truck pack up and get us out of there in 5 days, and we moved to Asheville, North Carolina in 2005. I started in real estate development, working for a large developer that was buying tracts of land outside of Asheville and building second home gated communities with golf courses. And it was perfect. We loved the town. We loved the people. And then 2009 happened. The market crashed. And literally my developer went from millions of dollars in sales to facing bankruptcy in less than 6 months. And that's when, early 2009, Molly and I were driving back from a little getaway, and then she looked at me and said, "What are we going to do?" So the backstory to this, since you asked me about where did the food part come from, was you're right. I mean, San Francisco, the food seems amazing, but coming from India, and you'll find most immigrants from countries like India or Mexico or anywhere in Asia. When we come to America, like we kind of tend to start learning how to cook, even the men, even if I come from a culture where mostly the women cook. Cause I can go out to an Indian restaurant here and there, but for the most part, if I want to eat sort of my country's food on a regular basis, I better learn how to cook it quickly. And so I used to do that, and I used to cook at home and started cooking mostly Indian food, and was cooking in college while I was doing my MBA, and my roommates would show up and I'll know when I was cooking, and next thing you know, there was a crowd eating. And then when I got to San Francisco and started getting exposed to some really great restaurants, I just started expanding my repertoire. So literally, living there for 10 years was an education on not just becoming a foodie, but also really learning how to cook. And I also just found myself naturally in and out of the restaurant world. My mother-in-law was a restaurateur, and she had sold a restaurant to move to California, but then she was dating a guy that was a chef, and he cooked a lot, and I'd hang out with him, and I knew a little bit of the behind the scenes of the restaurant world, so whenever I was at a restaurant, if I had a chance to meet the chef or go in the kitchen or pick up something new, that's what I did. And people laugh when I say this, but I was like, I learned a lot from watching the Food Network. Well, back then, it was, before Rachel Ray and all of that, it was back when you still had Jacques Pepin and Julia Child and their shows on TV, and you could actually learn something from watching these guys cook. And that was it. Books, the internet, and TV. So here, fast forward back again to 2009, and Molly was asking me this, what turned out to be a pivotal question, like, for the last 15 years, you've enjoyed what you did, you were good at it, but you never jumped out of bed saying, I can't wait to get to work today. And she was like, maybe this is a sign, maybe they were meant to do, maybe this is a chance to do something different. Now, of course, we're both 40, so this is like classic midlife crisis moment, right? So I'm like, well, if I could do anything I wanted to do, I mean, I wanted to cook, and we talked all the time about me maybe going back to Culinary Institute of America and getting a culinary degree, and then I would actually think this through and go, right, and then I'm a $10 an hour line cook for 8 years working for some asshole chef that's going to be yelling at me the whole time, and I'm 40 and I can't compete with 20-year-old young guns. I'm like, that's the stupidest idea in the world. So, and that was the end of that conversation, and, there's this, you hear this cliche that if something just percolates in your subconscious for a while, and you let it do that, sometimes something awesome can pop up. And 2 weeks later, I'm laying in bed reading a book at 11:30 at night with Molly by my side, and I sit bolt upright and look at Molly. I'm like, I'm an idiot. And she goes, well, what do you mean? I'm like, wait, I don't need to go work as a cook at somebody else's restaurant. I can open my own restaurant and do my own thing and pay myself what I want. And she looks at me like, what the hell do you know about opening restaurants? And I go, nobody else does. I said, take a look around. It's got one of the highest failure rates in this business. I'm like, I may not know a lot about restaurants, but I know a hell of a lot about business and sales and marketing. I said, I think we can do this. And she goes, what would you cook? And I said, the only thing that could be the most authentic thing that I do, which is my cuisine. And she said, well, okay. So I still had to write a 150-page business plan to convince her that we'd actually make money doing it, but that's kind of how it started.
150 pages, huh?
Well, I went a little nuts. I mean, there was, for a while I was really worried about this sort of myth or urban legend that, hey, 70, 80, 90%, depends on who you ask, of restaurants, go out of business in the first 5 years. I was really curious to find out is this for real or is this just a sort of urban legend? And so I did the research. The University of Florida had a hospitality management program where they'd done a study on restaurant closings. And they listed 5 reasons why a typical restaurant would close. And they have the numbers, by the way. It's not in the first year. I think I think a third of restaurants close in the first year. The ones that don't close in the first year usually make it through their 5th year, and that's when the second third closes, and for completely different reasons from the first year. But their point was that, he says, if all the usual suspects for why a restaurant goes out of business, lack of capital, shitty food, bad market conditions, location, all of those were completely eclipsed by the single most overriding factor for why they said restaurants went out of business. And that was lack of a defined concept that you could, in 3 words or less, if somebody asked you what kind of restaurant it was, answer that question. And the study went on to say that's why, even mom and pop Mexican restaurants and strip malls and Chinese restaurants and Italian restaurants all seem to last, and they're not even ones that aren't even that good. He goes, because one thing I've done in their favor is when somebody goes, what kind of food it is, you can just say Chinese and that's it. But when you have a restaurant that's going like, well, we do a fusion of Mediterranean tapas style, but with a little bit of Appalachian ingredients, and you lost me. That was their point. So that's why I was on a 50-page business plan, because I wanted to make sure my concept made sense.
Clarity and focus. Yeah. So okay.
Yeah.
So you went. So then, what year did you? When did you first open Chai Pani?
Well, it's funny you called today. Today's to the day, our 6-year anniversary of opening Chai Pani, September 23rd, 2009. What time is it?
So you made it past your 5th year. Yeah.
Yeah, this is year 6. Yes, 3/15. We were supposed to be open this day 6 years ago at until 11 o'clock at night, but we ran out of food at 2 o'clock and had to shut the doors. So right around now, I think we're practically prepping in the kitchen. So, yeah, we opened the doors to literally a line out the block. By the second day, there was a TV crew inside because they had no idea what the hell was going on and why there were lines around the block. We ran out of food, like I said, 2 o'clock the first day. On the second day, we ran out at 4 o'clock. On the third day, we had to shut down because we had no food left to even cook, and we had to go buy food and prep it. We opened the restaurant for $70,000, and the only money we had left was $250 in the cash register. And I knew that if we didn't sell enough food in the first 3 days, it wouldn't have enough money to buy more food or even make payroll for that first pay period. So that's how close we cut it.
Dude, that's amazing. So, okay, that brings up multiple questions.
Yeah.
Number one is, how were you able to open for just $70,000 in that, world when lots of people are spending 10 times that? I guess let's start with that. And then did you guys get investors, or was that just your savings, or how did you tell me about that?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is the middle of the Depression now of 2009. Lehman Brothers has gone under. Merrill Lynch got sold out of Bank of America. I mean, the market was a disaster, and no bank was giving money to anybody for any reason.
No.
So we went to our local bank, and, they were lovely people, and they just as kindly as they could said, Meherwan, we're not loaning money to anybody, A. B, restaurants, that's just, we don't normally give money to restaurants in the best of times. And C, Indian street food, they're like, you're in a town of 100,000 where 99,500 people are white. Like, people barely know where Indian food is, let alone Indian street food. And that was the end of that conversation. Then I went to the SBA. Then I went to these sort of microloan organizations that are set up to help businesses. And it was just, everybody was impressed with the 150-page business plan, but at the end of the day, like that. We can't give you the money. So Molly was adamant that we not leverage our house because it was, at this point, the only asset we still had. And so then I wrote an open letter to all my friends and family anybody that was close to us. And I kept it open, so I didn't actually email it to people individually with a name. I just sent it as a blank CC and say, if you're getting this letter and you don't respond, I won't know who it is or who it isn't. This is what we're doing, and this is what we believe in. And if you believe in us and believe that we'll pay you back, anything you can give would be appreciated. And the checks started coming in the mail: $75, $2,000, $300. And then a pivotal check was this young kid named Isaac Clay, who's now the general manager at Chai Pani Decatur and a partner in the business. I'd been his counselor at a youth camp once. That sounds, I think he's at least 10, maybe 15 years younger than me. And he was teaching at the local high school here, a math teacher. And he came to me and basically said, hey, and he'd been to India a number of times. And he says, hey, I heard you were trying to raise money for this Indian street food idea. I'm like, hey. He says, oh, dude, I've been thinking that I would want to open a restaurant like that because I think it's a brilliant idea. I'm like, oh shit, well, sorry, Isaac, I didn't mean to step on your toes or steal your thunder. I had no idea you had thoughts that you'd want to do something like that. He said, no, I could never open a restaurant. I'm here to give you a check. And, I think Isaac was 24 at the time, maybe, and a teacher. And he wrote a check for $25,000. And,
25?
$25,000, and that was
Wow.
at that time. It was like it was the difference between we can do this and we can't do this. And
amazing.
yeah, and I'm looking at this guy dumbfounded, going like, A, how did you get this much money, and B, this must be every penny you must own. So I think in that moment it was sort of established the first cultural touchstone of Chai Pani, where it established this notion that we believe in people more than we do in things. Because really, at the end of the day, Isaac had to believe in me to give me that money, not my idea. Because I looked him in the eye and said, "I will pay you back," and so that's how it happened. And then we, the ball kind of got rolling. A few more people came up with the rest. We, of course, kept maxed out our credit cards and emptied our bank accounts. And there was this little business downtown that was going under, and a new owner from Atlanta had purchased the building, Sammy Rollins, who is our landlord till today. And I found out from my real estate broker that I'd sort of put the word out to that I was looking for something, that this new owner was buying the building, and the existing restaurant that was in it was going out of business, and if I could get a jump with the new owner and talk to him, he might give me the space before he puts it on the market. So when Sammy and his wife Laura, Sammy was just this wonderful, sweet guy, this old school gentleman from Atlanta that had built his money in the plumbing business, and he had Indian food once in his life, and his wife had never had Indian food. So I'm sitting there, and he's looking at me, and he's asking me what experience I have in the business, and I'm like, well, none really. I waited tables, that matters. Where did you get your training as a chef? Well, actually, I'm self-taught. Great. Well, how much money do you have for working capital? Actually, none. All we have is what we have to open the restaurant. He goes, and then he goes, but tell me why you want to do this, and tell me what what do you think the numbers will look like? And I showed him my business plan, and Molly and I talked to him for a while. And then that evening, I sent him an email. I'm like, Sandy, I know this may seem like the craziest thing in the world to give this lease to me and Molly, and it was prime real estate. It's this amazing spot in downtown Asheville, which, has been a huge benefit as far as location to us being successful, at least in this first couple of years. So, and he could have leased that thing in a heartbeat to anybody in town. And I emailed him that night and just thanked him for meeting with me and kind of just gave him one last pitch. And 3 days later, he called us up and said he wanted to give us space. And when I asked him why, he said, I reminded him of him a little bit in the sense that I did my homework. I had my business plan. I thought through the numbers. None of it seemed pie in the sky. And at the end of the day, he says, and he followed up. And he goes, if somebody does that, then they have what I believe it takes to be successful in any business. So hey, 9 years of being in the sales business helped pay off with just a simple follow-up to say thank you to somebody for taking their time. So that's
Woody Allen said, Woody Allen said something like 80% of success is just showing up. It's the same sort of thing there. It's just that you followed up, and most people don't do that. Amazingly, yeah.
Amazing, and that's it's when I used to be in the auto industry, it was a damn cliche, but people never followed up. So,
golly, so then you guys, but then you still. Okay, so then the next question that I had that popped in my head earlier was, okay, so you got this money, you raised enough, you guys got started, you didn't have any working capital. All these rules of thumb are like, we'll have 6 months of working capital or whatever, and you have like a couple of days or whatever. So but then you have these lines out the door. So how did you do that? Like, how did you create the interest to be owing? People would love to have the issue of, holy crap, we ran out of food at 2 o'clock our first day because we had so many people. Like, right. What did you do to create that kind of interest before you even opened your doors?
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, even though everybody else was looking at this plan and my idea thought I was insane, I knew that this would be just a hit. I mean, Asheville was just on the cusp of this burgeoning food scene. I looked around this town and I saw people like myself and Molly, essentially young couples moving here from big cities like Seattle and Portland and, you know, Atlanta and San Francisco and LA, all doing what we were doing, trying to find a town that was sort of, you know, progressive in the mountains, hip and cool, and had this cool farming community. It was a great town in 2009 to just be, where there wasn't the pressure of like, oh my God, I graduated college and now I got to go find a job somewhere. It was the kind of town where your artists and your hippies and your, you know, people that were taking a break were, you know, hanging out because it was affordable. There was a cool vibe to the town. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Berkeley in the 80s. I mean, we took like 5 blocks out of Berkeley and dumped them in the mountains. And so I knew the market was there. I knew there was enough people around us to make this thing happen. And again, like my number, I mean, I'd opened this thing for $70,000. I was hoping to sell a few hundred cups of chai and a few samosas, you know, at the end of the day. I mean, in my mind, I'd be in the kitchen, Molly would be behind the register, and, you know, and my daughter would be in the corner doing her homework. You know, your classic immigrant family opens a restaurant scenario. But I'd be like, we'd be together, be gainfully employed, and most importantly, I'd be happy. And if I was happy, I knew Molly would be happy and I would be happy. So that was the plan. And I knew those numbers would work, but I also knew that there was potential for this to get busy because this is the kind of town that would love the idea of, ooh, Indian street food. It sounded different. It sounded exotic. The second thing that happened was all those friends and family that all gave us money. Well, there was a number of them that didn't have money but showed up to help work. People showed, friends flew from California, friends from around town, friends from Atlanta, said, hey, it's, you know, late summer, we're going to be in Asheville, you know, we'd love to come and help you put this thing together. So it went from, you know, the startup of a business to almost like this, you know, kind of like a community work. I mean, like sort of almost like building a house for a family. And that's what it felt like. And we couldn't even pay, you know, I mean, we couldn't even pay people. We were giving, even people that we had to pay, we were giving them $5 or $6 an hour and then giving them something called dosa dollars. You know, dosa is a South Indian street food snack. It's like a crepe. So we gave them dosa dollars as credit to his food and Chai Pani for life and or maybe a future paycheck if they ever made money. And those guys, you know, have their circles of friends and their circles of friends have their circles of friends. And again, social media was just starting to take off. Twitter is just starting to become, you know, what it is today. And it was literally 100% word of mouth. By the time, let's see, we opened in September, right? By December of that year, the local newspaper ran the most mentions on social media of any event or incident in Western North Carolina, and the opening of Chai Pani was the #1 most tweeted, blogged, or written about event in Western North Carolina. So yeah, and my instincts were right. People showed up, and way more than I thought they would. So.
Wow, that's amazing. And so this was 6 years ago. So you guys get started, you know, barreling right out of the gate, and here we are 6 years later. You've got another Chai Pani in Decatur, which is Atlanta, right, or outside of Atlanta?
Correct. Yeah, it's basically it's the neighborhood in Atlanta, right?
Okay. And then you've got Buxton Hall there in Asheville, which is a barbecue joint I want to learn about, and MG Road, which is a bar and lounge. So you've got 4 locations and then a 5th on the way. You said, right, that you're opening later this year?
That's right. Yeah, we're opening in Pump City Market in Atlanta, sort of another version of Indian street food called Boti, and it's going to be an Indian street grill.
Well, Meherwan, how are you doing this, man? You're doing all the stuff that you're not supposed to be able to do. That's 5 in like 6 years. Like that's all. And all these places, I mean, you know, like folks, listeners, you check these places out I mean, they're highly rated. They're well loved. You know, really popular, successful places. So tell me about that. I mean, that's fast growth, and I'm sure that there's a lot of challenges that come along with that. You must have really good people with you. I guess the guy who wrote the check, so he's part of the business too. That wrote the $25,000 check.
Yeah, I mean, and you're right, Will. It's been the people. Just from what's that old? Well, I don't know if it's an old saying. I'll take that back. I read something somewhere that some famous business guy said, and I can't remember who it was. Could have been Warren Buffett, could have been Steve Jobs, could have been one of those kind of guys. And it basically said that one commonality to many successful businesses that have started from scratch, that started with like in a garage, that one thing that they've always had in common, three things they've had in common is usually somebody with a very clear vision, like just a real sense of purpose. Number one. Number two, people that were willing to buy into that vision, like complete buy-in, almost like tribal loyalty buy-in. And number three, and kind of I think in my book most importantly, limited resources. In fact, scarcity of resources. And the first two make sense. But the third one, actually, to me, just really sort of, struck the deepest. Because, that was us in spades, all three. I mean, I had this real clear sense of what I want to do that most people had no idea what I was even talking about, but just when I explained to them, bought into the vision. Number two, those people showed up that completely bought into this idea of the vision, or maybe they were buying into the idea of me, but in either case, they believe in something. And then our limited resources basically made us really think outside the box and do things completely. It forced us to do things differently because we didn't have the money to do it the way we were supposed to. For example, opening with $250 in the cash register and not even having enough money for payroll, and using social media and stuff, putting ads in the local paper. We couldn't afford to advertise at all, period, zero, none. And yet, at the same time, anytime a charity approached us for any kind of a benefit or to give food or to give gift cards or to come cook, we'd jump all over it. And now, 6 years later, with 4 restaurants and a fifth on the way, we still do that. We don't advertise, but we give tens of thousands of dollars a year of food or time or effort into worthy causes, charities, whether it's, right now we just recently are doing a fundraiser for Our Voice, which is a rape and crisis counseling center in the local chapter in Asheville, and we're just raising money for them, and we do that on a regular basis. So those three ingredients combined created a environment, if you will, that has allowed us to do sort of what, you might seem extraordinary to you, but to us, that was just the way we did things. And that's how we're able to get to where we're today.
Oh man, I could not agree more with the scarcity of resources. It really, I'll butcher this quote. I don't even know who said it, but scarcity is necessity is the mother of all invention. I think it is.
Right.
And
that's exactly.
Yeah, I mean that's which is so. And if you're listening, don't let not having the funds or believing that you have the resources keep you from doing it, because it really does. It does force you to think outside the box and be creative and come up with ways that are not the conventional ways, which a lot of times wind up being what makes you so successful. And Bill, look at that. So the conventional, what did you do? You tried the bank, that didn't work. The SBA, that didn't work. So then you do this totally unconventional thing of emailing all these people and saying, hey, could you lend us some money? We'll pay you back. And then what happens? You create this rabid audience of fans, some who give money, some who give time, some who give both, all who tell others, and boom, you have this huge line out your door day one. But this is really, I've heard that before too. I don't know who said it either, Meherwan, but it really is a great point to emphasize that scarcity of resources can actually be a really good thing. And if you guys had gone out and the bank had lent you $500,000, you probably would have done things very differently, and then you would have had this big debt load, and you probably would have spent a lot more money, and you've been paying back the debt all this time. And you started with $250, and you had debt in the sense that you had people that you wanted to pay back. But then that even makes you more like you have these people that have trusted you, so it probably fueled your fire even more to get it right, didn't it?
Exactly. And not only that, but they're rooting for you. They've got people that are not only loaning you money, but then they're showing up every day to eat at the restaurant and support the business because they, believe in it and they want it to be successful. Not least because then they'd also get their money back. But it just created this sort of, a virtuous cycle, if you will, of basically goodwill within the community. And this is a story we were very open with the town about. Like, it wasn't like, it was no secret that this is how we raised the money to do this, because, like I said, all our friends that were there that had loaned us money were helping out, were telling their friends. I mean, it was like, today they call it a Kickstarter campaign or whatever, or crowdfunding. Well, this was, pre-Kickstarter. This is our version of it. And, and because it was so local, it really did create sort of a cycle of goodwill.
That's awesome, man. So, well, then have you carried that over to the openings of your other ones? I mean, how have you guys, what's changed as you've kind of grown and then you're in two cities now? I mean,
yeah, I mean, raising money is no longer an issue, thank God. I mean, the first, we opened and there's lines out the door and this, that, the other, but our first major national write-up was, again, probably serendipity. The 1 year to the date almost, after we opened, in October of 2010, the New York Times came to do a write-up on Asheville called the 36 Hours in Asheville, and they do this all over the world. They spend 36 hours in a city, and then they write up on the travel section of the Sunday edition of the New York Times. And I know people that will, use that as a reference guide for when they go to a city and do the things, because the New York Times is so highly respected. And they came to Asheville, and they wrote up the 10 things to do in Asheville, and they wrote up Chai Pani, and I think they quoted us as a star in the downtown dining scene or something like that, and that blew it right open. I mean, we're getting calls from all over the country. We've had people calling to make reservations, and Asheville's star was simultaneously rising. More and more people were coming to visit. Many more tourists were coming. Many more people were moving here. So it all collided perfectly and sort of created this perfect storm for Chai Pani to just reach sort of almost, a much broader audience than just being in town. And then these things had a snowball effect. One write-up leads to another, the next thing you know. And also with Asheville, I mean, the more Asheville got written up, the more the magazines were coming in looking for the cool businesses to talk about, and the more we were perceived as cool, the more we got written up about. So GQ and Men's Magazine and Huffington Post and the Wall Street Journal and USA Today, I mean, and it just snowballed that first year. I mean, it was insane. And then the money started coming, and what I mean by that is, literally once a week I was getting a phone call from somebody that wanted to franchise or invest or open one in a new location, and I was so not prepared for this or even knew how to put up, how to sort of handle this. We were barely, able to keep the machine, keep Chai Pani sort of staffed and stocked and able to feed the amount of people that come to the door. So it took us 2009, 10, 11, 12, 4 years to open the second one. I mean, we didn't open until late 2012 is when we started looking at the second location in Decatur. And at that point, raising some money to open that was just as simple as reaching back out to the people that had asked to invest with us that were still what I would consider in the circle of family and friends, except they had bigger checkbooks at that time. So that's how we opened the second one. But as far as our ethos of how to open a restaurant, for me, like opening in the middle of a recession the way we did was just a lesson that was insanely valuable, because it just really taught me to look at numbers and how much it costs to open a restaurant and what it takes differently than if we had gotten all that money up front like you were talking about. So even with the new restaurants, my term for it is we bootstrap it. So we take the least amount possible to have the least debt load in the business, so that we can, do things the way we want to do it and not be beholden to the balance sheet or to an investor payment schedule or anything like that.
Nice, man. That's good that you've been able to carry that over. That probably becomes a little harder over time because it is, you have access to so much more capital, and so it's good that you're staying on your toes, forcing yourself to stay on your toes. It sounds like, which is really wise for sure.
Yeah. Thanks.
So then but you must have, and now you've got so you've got several places here. You and Molly must have found a way to trust people. You obviously, don't have your hands in all the details of all this stuff. You have to have good people managing this for you, and you must have a lot of trust in people and give them a lot of autonomy to do things, within certain parameters, I assume. But I mean, is that part of how you're able to do that successfully? To have multiple locations? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the core team, the first, like I said, the first major expansion was Atlanta, and it was a big jump. I mean, we went from a small 40-seat restaurant, which, I mean, I don't know if you're listening, many listeners maybe in the restaurant industry, just to give you an idea of how efficient and productive a place can be. A 40-seat restaurant 2 Saturdays ago did 315 colors for dinner. So that just that just shows you like what can be done if you really maximize efficiency and productivity. But anyways, we went from that to a 125-seat restaurant in Decatur in a much bigger market. Before we opened, Atlanta Magazine named Chai Pani one of the 10 most anticipated openings of 2013. After we opened, we were named one of the 10 best new restaurants in Atlanta, and ever since then, they won all those accolades. So we knew we were going into a much bigger, higher visibility market, and some of the reputation that we built up was preceding us, and we had to deliver. So 9 of our Chai Pani Asheville family uprooted themselves and relocated to Atlanta to help open it, and we determined, I called them my culture carriers because I wanted them to bring, 3+ years of sort of this culture that we built at Chai Pani to the new business there, even though we'd be hiring, 50, 60 new individuals there. And some of them came back because they were able to do their job and come back to Asheville, and some of them stayed on there. So, we had opened the Chai Pani kitchen with 4 hires in the kitchen. 3 of the 4 hires that were all line cooks that started with me are still at Chai Pani, and one of them, Daniel Peach, is now the head chef in Decatur. He was just named a 30 under 30 rock star by Zagat magazine. And the other one, James, is here with me in Asheville, and he runs the kitchen program here. And that's kind of how we do it. Many times I will hire or hang on to people even though I don't have a job for them, and even may not necessarily be able to even afford to keep them on or to hire them, but because I know that one day this person's going to be a rock star somewhere else and help us grow the business. So that's what we do.
Well, yeah, this is that. That's really, you said earlier we believe in people more than we do in things. So you really, this is, you truly do follow through on that, and that's clearly how you operate. You want good people in there, and you find ways to make it work in the organization so that they can shine.
And trust. Trust, and I'm not talking about, like it's just an easy word to throw on, trust your people. No, I'm saying trust to the point where if I know I've hired really good, smart people, you're probably familiar with Danny Myers from the Union Square Hospitality Group from the restaurants in New York, and he's got this great book called Setting the Table.
Setting the Table,
yes. And there was a couple of ideas that I kind of stole from that book when we, started really ramping up and hiring people. So I was like, who are we looking for? And we've got our application online on your website. So if you would take a look at it, it's probably the craziest application. Well, I don't know. You've got a lot of restaurants. So you've probably seen a lot of crazy applications. But, we ask questions that many people stop and go, I've never been asked that on a job application before. And what I'm looking for is does this person have empathy? Do they actually understand how their actions make other people feel, or the things they say? Does this person have sort of emotional intelligence? Or can they communicate well emotionally? And understand how emotionally driven people are at the end of the day, and how you motivate them is by connecting at that level. Do they have an excellence reflex that Danny Meyer talks about? Where he says, people duck reflexively if you throw something at them, and the excellence reflex is a similar instinct to fix something that isn't right. And, for me, work ethic is not about how many hours somebody puts in, how hard they work. Work ethic to me is this inclination to always do something as well as it possibly could be done. Nothing less than that for somebody's acceptable. And there are people all around us wired that way. So we look for that combination, and then I really actually let them run with it. And I go, hey, I would do no better or no worse than them in their shoes with decisions. And if I trusted myself to figure it out and make the right one, then I got to trust them too. As long as I have my culture carriers in there, in the midst of them, I know, generally speaking, our culture will be intact, but I'm going to let these people make their own decisions. So that's how Chai Pani Decatur runs now. It's completely autonomous business where my job is just to inspire, and not worry too much about micromanaging their decisions.
Yeah, I one of the guys I interviewed for our book a few years ago said if you want to, if you want to grow, you have to learn to let go, and I always kind of remember that.
Yes, that's absolutely right.
He thought about going from micromanaging to learning, like he learned, he figured out over time, like I have to let go and trust people, and then that allowed him to grow, and he's got a really successful operation with a bunch of restaurants, and but he's not down
I
in
think
details.
all the successful guys eventually have to figure that out. I completely agree with you.
So, well, you guys have had just a really inspiring and wonderful story, Meherwan. So I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing it. There's so much to learn from this. So much to learn from this. And by the way, folks, if you're listening, do read Setting the Table. It's like a phenomenal book by Danny Meyer, and it's timeless. He wrote it a long time ago, but it's a great book. I can't tell you how many people I've interviewed that mention that book.
Go ahead.
Just because it's no surprise to me that a lot of the folks I've interviewed that are very successful, like yourself, and kind of figured it out, have read that and have applied a lot of that to their operation. So I
well, that's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah, I was saying most of the people you interview, I'm assuming if they've enjoyed some success, they've probably at some point or the other picked up, some of the more inspiring books in our business, and that was really, it was really. I mean, I think a lot of people that are drawn to a book like that and then want to sort of practice some of the precepts are naturally inclined or instinctively already figure some of that out themselves. Danny just helped sort of, articulate it better. So.
That's right. And then you probably, and some of that stuff may be in the back of your mind, but you don't, I mean, the key thing too is the implementation. Like there's one thing to go, hey, that sounds great. But then to go, I buy into that. Like that resonates with what I kind of thought in the back of my mind. I'm going to do that. And executing on that is, that's what it really comes down to. So, and you guys have clearly done that really well. So, gosh. I mean, folks, if you're in Asheville, everybody, like the word's out about Asheville now, I think. It probably wasn't in 2009. People know about Asheville now. It's a beautiful town in North Carolina mountains. It looks like somebody took like a town in Oregon and picked it up and stuck it in the North Carolina mountains. It's awesome. It's beautiful. Great people there. Great vacation place. Probably one of those places where you go and stay and you eat, at places like Chai Pani and your other places, and you interact with all the people and you see the scenery. You're like, why don't we just move here? It's like the great town. Well, listen, hey man, I really, really appreciate you taking the time to do this. I do want to ask you one more thing, just real quick. Cause I grew up in North Carolina and I love barbecue, and I would eat barbecue just about every day. So tell me about how did you guys get out into barbecue there at Buxton Hall, and what's that all about?
Again, it's back to people again. It sounds so funny to say this over and over again, but it really was. One of the other chefs in this town, Elliot Moss, he was the chef at this restaurant called the Admiral, which kind of blew up at the same time Chai Pani did. He went from being a dive bar on the wrong side of the tracks in a concrete cinder block building to one of the most sort of talked about and renowned gastro sort of pubs in this region. And 2 weeks to get a reservation and written up and accolades, and he too was nominated for a James Beard Award back in 2014 or something like that. And then one day he walked away, and I was kind of met him professionally through the circuit. We cooked at a few events together and showed up at a few industry events, and so I reached out to him and I'm like, hey, what's going on? And he said, well, this whole time he was not an owner of that business. He was just the chef, but he had been basically, in his words, been made a promise to have his own restaurant one day, and then that fell apart, and then the partnership fell through. And it was going to be whole hog, 100% wood smoke, Eastern Carolina style barbecue. And I didn't know much about Eastern Carolina style barbecue. I mean, I was in California this whole time, and when I first came to the South, and I would say, hey, I'm having a barbecue. You guys want to come over? Somebody would correct me and say, look, unless you shot a pig in the head and spent 11 hours smoking it, it's not a barbecue, it's a cookout.
You're grilling out. Yeah, that's right.
You're grilling. You're not barbecuing, brother. I was like, right, okay, got it. But here's the thing. It's like I recognize in Elliot sort of that same spark that I had in my eye when people would ask me about Chai Pani before we opened, where I'd kind of get like a mad scientist look in my eye and start going off on them about why I thought this is the best idea in the world. And Elliot had that look in his eye when he was talking about barbecue. He grew up in Florence, South Carolina, and he grew up eating this sort of Eastern Carolina style barbecue. And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. He says, well, let's do this. Why don't we go on a tour, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So we ended up renting a caravan, piled 5 of us in there, including a local food writer for the local magazine and a videographer, and we spent 5 days going through the Carolinas, eating at some of the most iconic barbecue joints out there. Rodney Scott's in Hemingway, South Carolina, Sam Jones's place in Kingston or Eden, North Carolina, and on and on. And when I came back, not only to have an education in barbecue, but I knew that I wanted to help Elliot open a restaurant. And so we kind of like literally sort of, just fell into an easy sort of conversation about finding a space and helping him build this thing. And Molly and everybody in my company is looking at me like, why are we getting into the barbecue business? And I'm like, when I opened Chai Pani, it was obviously I had to do Indian food and I had to do the food I was interested in because it would be the most authentic to who I was as a person. But I love food of all. I mean, I would have, as happily opened an Italian restaurant if I was Italian, or a Colombian restaurant if I was from Colombia. I said it just so happened to be. But I still love food and love other cultures and love the food. And this guy is onto something amazing. Because I would go to those restaurants and see the lines of people outside, those little shacks in the middle of nowhere, queued up for barbecue. And I'm saying, there's something going on at a cultural level that runs deep. The way it does for Indians when they come to Chai Pani and start and get tears in their eyes because they're eating the food that they hadn't eaten since they left India 15 years ago. And I want to tap into that. And I believe in this guy. And that's what happened. So, it took us a year and a half to put all the pieces together, but we finally did, and Buxton Hall opened about 3 weeks ago, and it's everything we ever hoped it would be. So
man, I cannot wait to come have some of that barbecue, my friend. I mean, my mouth is watering right now. I'm being
and it is. I mean, I'm actually in Buxton Hall downstairs in the office talking to you, and I can smell the wood smoke. It's all 100% wood fired. We're the first. I think one of the, definitely the only place in Asheville that figured out how to put the pits inside the building, because we ended up with a 10,000 square foot ex-roller skating rink from the 1920s that used to be in a black neighborhood. So it was actually sort of, the African-American roller skating rink of Asheville in the 1920s. Soaring high ceilings with barrel wood ceilings that go 20, 30 feet high, floor-to-ceiling windows that look out onto the mountains, and you walk in and you feel like you're stepping into Valhalla or something like that. And you got the pits and the smoke and yeah, it's any foodie's dream come true.
My friend, so we're about 2.5 hours from me. I might make a day trip sometime soon.
Give me a call or text me or email me if you're coming out. I'd love to feed you.
Awesome, man. Okay, well, that's really, and of course, the point there being, this goes back to what you said. It's clear. I mean, I really love this, is the believing in people. And what's his name? Your partner there?
Elliot Moss.
Elliot Moss. So you saw, as you said, the bad scientist look in his eyes, the passion and love, and the vision that he had, and there you go. So, man, I'm so excited for y'all. I really am.
You, man.
Pass that along to Molly, and you guys are awesome, and I really appreciate you taking the time. This is highly educational for anybody that listens to this, and just can't thank you enough, man. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks, Jim, man. And saying we love you guys. We love Schedule Fly. I tell everybody in your shot about your software, and not only that, it's like I see your story, I read your story, and I see glimpses of everything that I've been talking about and what you guys have done. I know your story pretty well too. I've read the book. I just think what you guys are doing is amazing, and it's the fact that I can pick up the phone and one of the answers it blows my mind. And every day I get approached by millions of, software sort of companies wanting us to try this business or that business. I'm like, no, I got my people. I believe in these guys.
Oh man, I appreciate you saying that. That's so kind of you, Meherwan. Yeah, the philosophies are very similar, man. So that's who we love to serve. People that kind of think the same way, and so we're really excited.
Cool. Well, thank you, sir. It was an honor to be on your show. Just thank you so much for everything, and I'm sure we'll be talking years from now.
I will be there soon. I'll be in touch. I'm not kidding. All right, man. Take care. All right, have a good one. All right, see you.
You too. Bye.